Okay, so we're going to be talking today about being a preemie, and you have like something that my father has, COPD.
No, yeah, I actually just found that out pretty recently. Last time I went to visit my general practitioner. It is an asthma and COPD overlap. It was something I didn't even know. Like it's
Because you didn't need just one. You need to
no,
just keep
yeah, I didn't.
going.
And they were doing all these just random breathing tests, and they're like, oh yeah, so it sounds like you might have this thing which is called an asthma and COPD overlap. So people generally get asthma and COPD pretty confused because it's pretty common, really related to each other. So I was pretty surprised. I'm all like, oh really? Like I didn't know.
When I saw it on your list, I was really shocked because COPD tends to be older people. That
Exactly. Yeah, like people over 60. And I'm all like, wait, really?
my dad's definitely over 60, and yeah, that's when he got it. That's so
That is
Tyler. Oh my gosh, you're in that group where people are like, no, you're too young to have that. That's crazy. I hate. Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a shock for sure. Most of the things that I found out I had came as like a shock to me, and I'm all like, oh really?
Well, let's go through the list.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, so oh man, there's a lot. um,
Yeah, no, seriously, to get your notes, like for show notes, I always link up with like Mayo Clinic and NHIS on like what everyone has on show notes. And it took me about a half an hour to get through all of yours.
oh wow.
Yeah, that was a long list.
Okay. Hey, I mean, wow. But yeah, so I guess the most prevalent one people usually ask me, the one that I deal with the most commonly every single day, would likely be asthma. That's typically what I go through day to day, what affects me the most, what I have to sort of manage the most as far as symptoms and as far as taking daily medication. But I do also deal with quite a few other things, some related to my prematurity, some just happen to be out of luck. So yeah, I had asthma, and then I found out I had a COPD overlap with that as well. And then I do also have a few other typical things that happens when you also have asthma. Like I also found out when you have asthma, you're twice as likely to also have atopic dermatitis, which is also commonly known as eczema. So it's just basically um, all these different things that you can get just because you're super sensitive to whether it be things in the air or allergies or different things like that.
Yeah, that was it's so funny because like with Ehlers-Danlos, it's like all these weird things that you would never expect go together. And I would
Yeah,
never think asthma and eczema are like best friends and
no,
can't be
yeah,
separated. So
yeah.
so what is your daily management for your asthma? What does that look like?
So honestly, people think it's like this whole big out thing because I have to deal with it every day, but honestly, it's not. So I take two different medications. I take a long-term inhaled corticosteroid as well as an emergency rescue steroid. I do also have a breathing machine on the side, but typically when you get older into your later teens, you don't really require it as much. It's mainly meant for younger children who don't know how to manage their symptoms.
So how does this work out for you? Like I just hear the word steroids and I start getting like palpitations and nervous. Is it different when you have to inhale it than when you have to like, or I'm sorry, you're not inhaling it, you're taking the pills. Does it have the same sort of side effects that?
No, actually, luckily for me, I went with the inhaled route rather than the pills. Um, honestly, mm, I mean, I've read up on some of the symptoms that it can cause, and I would definitely be like, oh yeah, I totally have that. But I think it's definitely way more manageable than taking a pill every single day. Luckily, what I do is I have to take my long term twice a day. The long term sort of keeps it away to prevent an attack from happening if it unfortunately ever should. So I take that as soon as I wake up and as soon as I go to bed, and I usually have to use my rescue maybe about mm, like three times a week, just because like symptoms will start coming on. You get shortness of breath and wheezing and coughing, and then if it ever gets too extreme, then, that's when you got to go a little bit more direct, whether it be like using a machine, using more of the steroids you're already taking, or, things like that.
So was that an issue at school? I remember with my son's inhaler, it was like this huge issue where he couldn't just have the inhaler on him. He had to go to the office and go to the nurses. Did you have that stuff with when you were growing up?
So yeah, I did. Like I said, I've had asthma my entire life, so I've definitely been around the block a few times in terms of what that looks like. So yeah, when I was at school, it was mainly a lot more of an issue when I was younger because obviously I didn't know how to manage it. But now that like when I got into high school, I'm all like, oh, I know how to do this, and it was really funny because I mean, I'm sure as most schools, you're not allowed to have medication on you, like on your person, whether it be on you or in your bag. I'm like, that would just be so much hassle for me to go down to the nurse every single like day and do it that way. So I kept it on me, and luckily I never had too many strenuous classes. I did take gym my senior year because I pawned it off for so long, and luckily my coach knew, and my gym teacher, they were super cool about it. And I also was also doing track that year, so again everybody was just super cool about it. They're like, oh yeah, take it when you need it, and so yeah, it really wasn't too big of an issue for me.
That's fantastic. It was a real annoyance for him of having to like stops class, run to office, miss all of class, come back. So but you're in a
No.
very different state. We have very different laws here about what the kids can and can't bring to school. It gets really interesting sometimes. So you've been dealing with this like since day one. Do you want to kind of
Yeah.
explain the situation that brought you to there? And
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like you were explaining, so I was born a micro preemie.
oh,
Yeah, so I was born at 25 weeks gestation, 15 weeks early. My due date was in March, and I was born on the last day of December in '99. So I spent 3.5, almost 4 months in the neonatal intensive care unit down here in Phoenix. So yeah, been something that I've dealt with my entire life. It was just due to the massive amounts of lung tissue that had built up in the scar tissue, and being underdeveloped, it leaves you at more of a risk for exposure to things like chronic lung disease.
so is that trying to figure out like how this works is in your head, like you think, okay, well, preemie did okay, got home from NICU, everything should be fine. But I'm guessing that's not how that story worked out, or usually works out. You ended up with lung scar tissue and
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not sure of the full process, which I mean I probably should, but so yeah, typically, yeah, with preemies it just happens again, obviously because they're so underdeveloped and they're on all these different breathing tubes and machines and wires, and cannulas and things like that. Being exposed to not in the womb, it leaves them with all these greater disadvantages, um, happening to them. And luckily, the March of Dimes is fighting for ways to, sort of prevent that from happening. And luckily, there have been a lot of advancements made, especially towards micro preemies, but also their mothers as well, to ensure that they have healthy and longer term pregnancies.
so you got involved with March of Dimes, right?
I did, yeah. I was 15 when I joined, so I was a sophomore in high school. And it actually happened because one of my other good friends was involved with it as well. I didn't know that he was a preemie at all, and this was the first year that he was doing a fundraiser, and so I talked with him. I'm all like, hey, let me know if there's anything I can do. I kind of want to jump on board. See what I can do. Let's get this bigger. Let's get it better. Let's see what we can do. So we went and we talked to our principal about it, and he said, let's do it. And I've been doing it for 4 years now. Last year was my last year. I decided that I wanted to sort of broaden my horizons a little bit and sort of expand into something new.
And what's that something new?
So we're kind of still my team and I were kind of still in the early stages of what we're deciding to do, but so far it looks like we're going to stick with our main focus of child health care. So we've partnered with a photographer out here. Her name is Darian Klaus, who is a maternal photographer, and she runs a project known as the Rainbow Baby Project. It deals with, so a rainbow baby is a baby a baby following a miscarriage, or a baby who has died, whether it be, stillborn, miscarriage, or after infancy. So that's likely the route that we'll be taking this year.
So you say you have a team. This sounds very involved. I'm kind of baffled. So what do you mean by you have a team? What's the project that how does this, too much coffee, not enough painkillers. Words will actually start coming in a logical order. What is the end goal for what you're looking to do? Are you looking to build a foundation? What are you looking for?
Oh yeah. I'll admit I've thought of it. In terms of, I would definitely say I'm not very realistic when it comes to my ideas, and the people that I work with can definitely vouch. They're like, oh no, that's way too, we can't do that, we can't afford that. But no, when I say like my team, so these are people who have been helping me since I was in high school. They're a lot of my friends that I went to high school with, and they've really helped me to sort of make a name for what I've been doing, for what we've been doing. We're just basically just a group of teens, who want to make a difference, and that's what we've been doing. And we do it on our own accord. We make our own meetings, we do our own photo shoots, and
I want to hear more about this, because right now, like, the teen movement is kind of one of the most powerful movements we have here in the United States. It's really exciting to watch. I don't remember being like this as a teenager. So can you help me a little bit with what is your goal here with your foundation? How can people who are listening help?
Yeah, so
And what is your foundation called? What are you naming this?
Well, honestly, we're not actually like a full like nonprofit organization. That is definitely something, again, I've thought about. But obviously, when life gets in the way, you have other things to worry about. But again, we're not any sort of named foundation. We're not with anybody. We're not with any sort of corporation or business. Again, we're just like a group of teens. We're all like, we reach out to a cause that we think is worthy. We're all like, hey, we want to raise money for you. We want to try to do as much as we can. And that's what we do. And we start planning from there. Like, we're in the beginning stages right now of helping, again, like I said, a local photographer out here in Arizona who's running her own project, not necessarily a nonprofit. So what we do, we go through, we schedule these meetings where we sit down and we're like, hey, this is what we want to do. And we reach out to a lot of other businesses and schools out here in Arizona, see if they want to help. And that's what they do, whether it be, creating awareness, letting people know, or whether it's helping us rent out venues or spaces, or, even donating money.
That's amazing. So what could someone who's listening to this going, yeah, I want to back this up, do for you?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that would be amazing. Again, we're kind of in the stages right now where we want to do more than what we've been doing, and obviously it's a little bit hard because we're all teenagers, trying to find our own balance on top of with what we're already trying to do.
So explain to me balance for you, because you're managing quite a few conditions, and I'm guessing you're still in school. Are you still in high school? Are you in college now?
Yeah, I'm in college. I am just doing online college for right now before I decide to transfer to hopefully a university. But yeah, so that was partially the reason why I ended up doing online college, was because of the difficulties that I was already facing. And it definitely, I could tell after I graduated high school, it got a lot more prevalent. So as embarrassing as this might be to like say to everyone, so yeah, I'm almost 20. I'll be 20 in December. I don't have my license. And then people are always so flabbergasted when I tell them that. I'm all like, it's not my fault, I promise. So yeah, another thing I dealt with when I was born premature, I had a condition known as retinopathy of prematurity. It enlarges the blood vessels behind your eye and your brain. And if not caught early enough, it can cause permanent blindness. So that was something I went with. That was the very first surgery I had to correct the vision in my eyes. So, and people always ask me how that is today. And, you know, by looking at me, people would never guess that I ever had anything wrong with like the way that I see, especially because I wear contacts and I wear glasses and all that. But, you know, people always ask me. So then when I went to the DMV, I failed my vision test the first time. And I'm like, oh, great. So that's, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I just followed up with my eye doctor, and my vision, it has gotten better over the years, but I am legally blind in my left eye. So it definitely makes driving more of a concern and an issue more than a standard teenager.
That's a fair point. How does Uber and Lyft factor into your life, or do you just rely on the kindness of family? And I'm in a very similar boat. It's not my eyes, it's my legs dislocate very easily, so I tend to have to rely on everyone as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a frightening thing if you're thinking about driving and at a minute your femur can just pop out of your
Oh my
socket.
gosh.
So I totally hear you in that. Try being 42 and being like, hey, I don't know if I can drive. It definitely gets more and more embarrassing as that goes on.
Yeah, I mean, so I have had to rely on Uber and Lyft a few times, especially when I was working and still going to school full time. But now I sort of have it under a manageable situation. But luckily, I have two very amazing, very gracious and loving parents who have me at their whim to use. So
That is lovely to have. I'm in a very similar space where I could not get around without my mom. It's amazing. They're always
yeah, I
still
don't know
there.
what I would do. I'd probably just sit at home all day.
I definitely hear that too. And then you start a podcast, and that's pretty sure that shakes down. So how do you find a balance? I'm very curious with you're doing a tremendous amount of it sounds like volunteer work and building up a foundation. Do you have a name for what you're doing with all of
Um,
everyone together?
we do not. I'm sure I've actually never really put in much thought into it. I mean, I'm not even sure how that process would work. I mean,
Maybe
I'm
we'll
sure.
talk after the recording, because I
Yeah.
think you have like some spot where lightning's gonna hit, and you should probably have like an actual, if you have a name for it that people could actually like go to. And if we discuss and find something for Taylor, I will have this in the show notes so that you have a way to contact. How do you guys choose what project to take on?
So, like I said, well, it's mainly me, so I run everything. You know, I sort of coordinate what happens, and they're all awesome. They just blindly follow me, and you know, I shouldn't say that. They graciously input all their own ideas, all their own opinions. Everyone on my team is so amazing. So again, I wanted to stick with sort of child healthcare after I left the March of Dimes, and so that was what we stuck with.
That's amazing. Most of the time we think about it just like writing a check for something, and for you to
Yeah.
like really decide that you're going to create a movement. I'm very impressed. Did you have any inspiration or anyone who inspired you to go forward with this?
I would say there were definitely quite a few people. Again, the March of Dimes fundraiser that we were having at our high school happened before I even joined, so it was partially due to what was already happening, and I'm all like, you know, I can do that. I can totally do that, and that's what happened. And I went and I talked about it with some people, and I'm all like, hey, you know, let's do it, and that's what we've been doing ever since.
That's amazing. And I'm also so happy for you that you're of a generation where you have the option for online college. That had
Oh,
just come up, like just baby steps when I got into grad school. That's a wonderful thing to have.
oh yeah, definitely. It was definitely, while it was my only option, it also makes it a lot easier because my schedule is a lot more flexible. I can sort of do my own routine on top of it, and I can take it with me, you know, wherever I go. So it's definitely been an amazing thing to be able to have at my disposal.
That's pretty fantastic. I'm actually a little jealous. That's a wonderful tool to have. So when you were dealing with all of the asthma, and you do have to self-manage even when you're a kid and you're at school, how can caregivers help smaller children get to a good place? Like, What can parents do to not overprotect, helicopter, but still make sure their kids are safe with their care?
Okay, so definitely the number one thing that I would say is definitely just be sure to have an action plan. It can honestly come out of nowhere. It can happen very sporadically, and you don't ever want to be in a situation where you feel like it's an emergency. That is the last thing that you want to try to do, and that is the one thing that you want to try to prevent. Whether you have to go to an urgent care, or have to go to a hospital. So it's definitely just talk with your general practitioner or whoever you visit, and just make sure that you have an action plan. Make sure that the medications that you use are working, whether it be for you or your child.
And how do you think that caregivers can help work with kids and not scare them and still give them the seriousness behind like what they're doing, but not terrify them?
Oof. I mean, I couldn't say that I ever had that problem when I was younger. But definitely probably just be patient. Kids take everything in different ways, and every single kid is different. So again, it's all about just finding what works best for them.
Okay. So what do you want people to know about what your daily life is like? It sounds like you've done some amazing ways to continue your education, to have really meaningful volunteer work in your life. What do you want people to know about what your days are like?
Ooh, what do I want people to know?
That's fair.
That it is definitely not as easy as it seems. So yeah, I'm sure I already know people are all like, oh yeah, so you just you take a few puffs off an inhaler and you're good to go. That's all you have to do. And I'm like, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Well,
Especially
explain how it's more complicated, because I think a lot of people get very confused as to what this looks like.
yeah, definitely. And again, also because I'm dealing with more than one disability at a time. So there's a lot of different factors that play into sort of what a daily day looks like. So yeah, I just tell people, just always, know what somebody else is going through, even if you don't. Just be kind.
That's kind of the underlying, I hope 2019, 2020, we just underline the words be kind, like just
Yes.
assume that you should like always just assume the best, like don't assume malice unless there's like an actual backed up reason. Yeah, be kind is a good one. Even if you don't understand, you can still be kind.
Yes, definitely. And I mean, when I was still in high school, it was funny because some I had some people that knew, but it was obviously like never something that I brought up. And again, like I was saying beforehand, I think there definitely sort of is a stigma that revolves around what you can see and what you can't, especially when it comes to some of the more complex diseases and disabilities. You know, people question what they don't know, and that's just human nature.
That's a very kind way to phrase that. How did this work out for you for relationships and friendships?
I mean, luckily it was never too big of an issue. All my close friends knew, and they're all like, okay. And I'm all like, it was never brought up, and like, so yeah, it was really never an issue for me.
That's amazing and wonderful. I'm very glad for you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I have some really amazing people in my life, so.
it sounds like you do. I'm really thrilled for you. It sounds like you have really good people who support you and help you move forward. It sounds like you have a lot that you're moving forward on.
I do, yeah, and I'm very fortunate because I couldn't do it without really anybody. But I would for sure say like 95% of the props go to my mom. So
I bet she's gonna love hearing that. I would be openly like crying and smiling if my kids ever said something like that. So
yeah, she has been my like best friend since day one. She's given up so many sacrifices for me. She's done so much. Also when I was in the NICU, she was going through that as well. So it was an ongoing battle, and not only mom, but like both of my parents. So I can like even imagine what it would have been like, especially since they lost a baby before that also.
I just want to hug your parents right now. My heart like hurts for like what they must have felt like. I've been fairly close to that, and that's brutal.
Yeah, it is definitely a scary situation for sure.
I'm really glad you're working with the rainbow baby thing. I used to be a professional photographer, so we had all heard about a lot of these different charities like Rainbow Babies, and there's another one that I'm blanking on right now. But if anyone wants to get involved in these charities, I'm gonna if you go to show notes, I will have links to those charities because they're so important. And I have friends who are still doing those, where they go to the hospitals and to the NICUs to do family photos. So it's important. I'm really glad you hooked in with that.
Yeah, again, it's given me so much to be thankful for. Not only spreading awareness, but to be able to sort of bring the community together in something that is still an ongoing issue. Especially here in the United States, and surprisingly, with all the technological advances that the U.S. has, they're placing average as far as maternal health care and pregnancies and preventing premature birth. So there's always something that somebody can do.
Yeah, we just saw a 20% rise in maternal mortality rates, especially among Black women. Yes, it's been a real big failing lately in the United States. Is there anything you could think of that maybe policy could be different, or things that could help with making sure that there's forward movement? I'm so sorry. Anyone who's listening to this, please forgive me as I am running around words. It's been the most brutal week, and I cannot form a complete sentence in my head. And Taylor's been so nice to me, but my apologies for my brainlessness today. But can you think of like anything that could actually change or help with this? Because I think a lot of us aren't familiar with what those technologies are, or what could be done at a state or government level to help out.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I'm not too familiar with sort of the policies and sort of renditions that they have in place. But one thing I probably can make a comment on is just making sure that, especially for children who suffer, with lung problems and chronic illness, just making sure that things are more disposable and making sure that things are more affordable. Um,
That'd be
luckily,
nice. Yes.
yeah. So yeah, I do have insurance. I do have fairly good insurance, and having to pay for medication every single month is such a drag, to put it shortly.
Yeah, I hear you. My son had very bad asthma when he was little, and it was before the American Care Act, and we would have to pay hundreds of dollars every month for inhalers and nebulizers.
Yeah, it is expensive, very very expensive, and unfortunately, it isn't covered under all insurances. And it's the same thing as insulin. Diabetics who need insulin and they don't have insurance, and then they have to pay all this money out of pocket. And we're all like, this should be something that should already be supplied.
I hear you completely. And for those of you in our international audience, we are both here in the United States. And even though the ACA passed, it got gutted, and a lot of us are stuck not knowing whether our medicine will or ever will be again covered. So there's that. Not a political statement, everyone, by the way. That is just pure fact. And I just have the radical idea that people should not die because they don't have insurance or don't have good insurance. Anyway, so you have coping mechanisms. What are they?
Oh, um, so as far as day to day, or just really, I really only use these in the case of an emergency. Um, it would definitely be sure to have your air filtered and avoid what that your stimulants are. As I
So by air
explained,
filtered, are you meaning like something that's in your room that's an air filter, or?
it can be for certain people. Luckily, I don't have to do that. I just have to make sure that whatever is in my general vicinity, it's not something that I know can be a stimulant. So for me, it's obviously different with every kid. Some get triggered to like animal hair. Some get triggered to pollen. Some get triggered to like dust and mold and all these other things. I pretty much cover almost everything, so I'm on this I'm on that spectrum. So coping definitely, again, just making sure that you're aware of your surroundings. And it's happened to me numerous times where I've walked into situations that I probably shouldn't have, and it ended up costing me big time.
Explain costing, because I'm not sure, like if you're around perfume or chemicals, is that an issue or?
Perfume, luckily I haven't had an issue with that. Definitely for me, it's definitely animal hair, mold, grass, things like that. But again, when I say costing, so a time to mention, last month I was visiting my cousin in Scottsdale. She has an apartment, and she does have an animal. She has a bunny, but I thought that wasn't going to be an issue. So yeah, I went and I had stayed the night, and it was 12 hours of, just feeling like I was literally going to die from suffocation. And I kid you not, people always say I'm exaggerating, but if you've ever dealt with asthma, then you know. Being able to not breathe is very uncomfortable.
So how do you move around the world to go to friends' house? Like, do you have to just have everyone come to your house? I just like trying to figure out, like with animal hair, like you can't even get into a car unless you know that they don't have pets that have been in the car.
No, yeah. Sometimes, I'll have to ask people beforehand, like, hey, do you have this around your house? Do you have this? Do you have an animal? And if they're all like, yeah, I'm all like, okay, well, I probably might not be able to come, but if you want to come over here, then we could totally do it.
So how do you handle that with cars or with Uber? Do you make sure that the cars don't take animals or?
Luckily, I've only used car services like that a few times, and I've never really had any problems. But yeah, they do have it listed on Uber or Lyft like that. Like if
Okay.
they have a service animal or anything of that kind. So, I'd be sure to like stray away from that.
That's another complication to the service animal debate. That's a very interesting
Yeah.
point I have not considered before. Well, Tyler, is there anything you wanted to go through or talk about that we haven't gone to?
I'm not sure. I mean, I pretty much think that we covered mostly everything everything that's wrong with me.
Well, thank you so much. You've been so patient with me today. I'm sorry I am not at even 80%, but I really wanted to talk to you today. And if you go over to the show notes, everyone who's listening, I will link up everything that we've been talking about, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about maybe if there's some way that you can help out Tyler and her mission, because it's a pretty amazing mission. Thank you, everyone. Please tune in next week. Be kind, be gentle, be a badass.